Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the comfort reading tag. I heard about this tag through Stephanie over at Miss Richards Reads, and it was originally created by the Babbling Bee. So I'll go ahead and link both of their channels down below, and thank you, Stephanie, for recommending this tag to me. There are 10 questions, but before we go ahead and get on into the questions, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, you can check down in the description box for links to my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. So when I was curating the books to match the prompts, I realized that as big as a fantasy reader I am, there are not a lot of fantasy books on this list, except for like 2. Prompt number 1 is The Kettle's On. What is a book that is always a steadfast comfort for you, is there when you need it? And this is a fantasy answer. I'm going to go with The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This book I have reread multiple times. It is one that every time I reread it, I remember how much I love it. I am just so charmed by the characters that Tolkien created. I love the setting and the world in Middle Earth and the Shire, and every time I read it, I just go to my happy place and I remember why I love this series so much. So this is definitely a series that I will probably reread multiple times in my life and just holds a special place in my heart. Prompt 2 is Grandmother's Quilt. What is a book that was given to you by a loved one or read aloud to you as a child? And most of the books that were read aloud to me when I was a child, I don't have anymore, but I do have a couple. And one of them is The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen, which is not really a happy story. It's about a little girl that freezes to death because she's poor and can't get any money for food or shelter. But I caught this from my mom one Christmas, and I don't know if she knew what it was about, if she just saw Hans Christian Andersen, but every single Christmas I would read this with my mom. She would read it aloud to me, and I still have it all these years later, so it does hold also a special place in my heart because of that. Prompt 3 is Warm Spices. What is a book that has very vivid prose or imagery? And I'm going to go with City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is an adult fantasy book, but her prose is very beautiful. It's not very purpley, but it does hold a lot of imagery. But whenever our author would describe like a scene, especially if it was something regarding the world, she was just so vivid with her details, and she included just so much imagery, a lot of taste and touch. I felt like I was there. I could smell the food that was cooking. I could taste what our characters were eating. Definitely a book, one of the books I've read this year that was very strong in beautiful imagery. Prompt 4 is Candlelight. What is a book that encourages you when things feel dark? And I'm going to go with Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. I read this book a couple of years ago, and it's a YA contemporary, which isn't normally something that I pick up. I read maybe 1 or 2 a year at the most, and I thought this one was really cute. But this book is all about a high school girl that is going through challenging times, and she ends up going to Ireland for her aunt's wedding. And I originally picked up this book because I had the opportunity to visit Ireland a couple years ago and absolutely loved it, so I love the setting. And this book is just all about her regaining confidence in herself and learning to move past bad things that have happened to her and learn how to deal with them in a healthy manner. So it's a really quick read. It's really short and cute, but it packs a powerful punch, and one that I definitely found encouraging at the time. Prompt 5 is Laugh Medicine. What is a book that made you laugh out loud? And I'm going to have to go with Anxious People by Frederick Backman. I read this, I think, last year, and it's an adult contemporary, and Frederick Backman is such a celebrated author, and this was the first book that I ever read by him. And to be honest, I was not a fan of this book. I did not like it overall, but it is very humorous. It is so funny. There were times I remember sitting on the couch and I just laughed out loud, and my husband is like, "What's wrong with you?" Because his just take on certain situations and the way that he verbalizes what's going on in these situations and how these characters are acting is very humorous. And I felt like the translator did an awesome job in communicating this humor from the original language to English. Definitely a book that made me laugh out loud, even though if I didn't particularly like the story as a whole. Prompt 6 is in bed all day. What is a book that you can read while you're curled up in bed? And when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about like rainy days, because that's really the only day that I would be curled up in bed. And I'm going to go with The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgkin Burnett. This is one of my favorite classics, but this book is just so sweet and so charming, and it's just full of nature and nature descriptions. And I think that the characters as children are phenomenally written, and it just puts a smile on your face, the way that we see these characters grow and change, and the way that nature is incorporated into that. And definitely a book that I would reread if I needed to pick me up. Question 7 is Endless Comfort. What is a book that brings you comfort no matter how many times you read it? And I feel like I'm kind of cheating here, but I'm going to go with The Hobbit, also by J.R.R. Tolkien, because this book I have read more times than I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because I used to read this book with my students before the curriculum was changed, and I just absolutely love Bilbo. He's one of my favorite characters, and I just love how wholesome he is, and you know, the challenges that he faces and how he overcomes them, and how witty he is, and just how he wants to go on adventures, but he also wants to stay true to like his homebody side. I can definitely relate to that. So I think Bilbo is the best part of this book and why I love reading it so much, but definitely a book that I get comfort from reading. Prompt 8 is Portable Hope. What is a book that restores your faith in humanity? I'm going to go with I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. I have to read this with my English 1 students. Like I said, the curriculum was changed in the state where I live, and I had to read this for the first time a couple of years ago, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite books of the year. If you don't know who Malala is, she is a girl that was targeted by the Taliban in Pakistan because she was speaking out for girls' right to go to school, and they attempted to assassinate her by shooting her in the head, and she ended up surviving and has since become a spokesperson for human rights and girls' right to an education, amongst other things. But just her whole story about growing up in Pakistan and dealing with the Taliban, and just her family dynamics, and just how she was able to move past what happened to her, was incredibly inspiring, and definitely one of my favorite books, and I cannot wait to read it again this year with my students. Prompt 9 is Basket for Your Neighbor. If you were putting together a bunch of books for a neighbor that were comforting, what would you include? And I'm only going to include one book because it really had an impact on me, and that is Queen Esther's Reflection by Anne Platts. This is all about Queen Esther, and if you don't know anything about Esther, she was a wife to Xerxes, and she was of Jewish ancestry, and she uncovers a plot by one of Xerxes' advisors to kill all of the Jews, and she has to approach her husband, which, you know, isn't like nowadays where it's like, hey babe, you know, no, Xerxes considered himself a god. He was considered a god, and you couldn't just approach him, and she had to approach him to tell him what was happening. And this book is all about her courage and her faith and her trust in God, and how she got through it and was able to save a lot of the Jewish people in this kingdom from essentially genocide. It's a very, very powerful book. I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. If you're looking for something to encourage you and fill you with hope, this is definitely a good one to pick up. Prompt 10 is A Walk in the Woods. What is a book that has beautiful nature writing? And I'm going to go with The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is an adult contemporary, and it takes place in Alaska. And it's definitely one of the most atmospheric books that I have read in a long time with regards to the setting. Our author did a great job researching the Alaskan setting and really making it believable. And there's this one scene where her and the male protagonist are in like this cabin in the woods, and they fly their plane there, and it's just beautiful. And just the mountains and the mist, and the way that the author really encompasses the climate and the setting of Alaska was just so well done. I really felt like I was there. And there is a sequel to this book that I still need to read, and I'm like so excited to be back in Alaska, like in my head. So definitely a great book for nature writing. Okay, you guys, so that is it for the comfort reading tag. Let me know in the comments if you have done this tag, or maybe what some of the answers to these prompts would be, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye! Thank you.